So over there in the distance, it's war and peace between Russia, the USA and Europe. Which way they're going to go. In the meanwhile, here in Oxford, in Tolkien's land, it's like the Shire. The daffodils are rising. Welcome to the Internet series. I'm Lucian Taylor in Oxford.
I'm Emily Taylor in Oxford.
And I'm Kieran McCarthy in Oxford.
Coming up this week, our team in Oxford, there you go, have been making a switch to the React UI library. That's not a framework. We discuss why we made that choice and what we are learning. Next, Emily's team has been researching secure by design. What does that mean and why should it matter to the man on the street? Finally, in tech news this week, Barclays Bank has been fined £7.5 million for a 3-day IT failure. And in the USA, the government's Social Security Administration is now preventing its staff from accessing a whole load of websites. Interesting. Emily, on the we're going to start with Emily on the secure by design topic. But before we do that, please subscribe to this channel. You can see the buttons now. Hit follow on Apple's podcasts and rate and review if you like us and you like what you're listening to. So Emily, you decided to get geeky today and actually get into some tech stuff, and I did as well, because let's face it, there's no real tech movement happening at the moment, is there? It's all about just about whether we're going to end the world.
Yeah,
or...
I think because I'm finding the news cycle now so scary and depressing and just awful, I've retreated into my comfort zone,
which is geeking,
which is tech policy.
Tech policy,
yeah.
You know, because
okay.
like clinging on, like. You
okay,
know.
so 2 questions. I mean, secure by design. What the hell does that mean?
Well, I think we can all say it's uncontroversial to say that the standards of cybersecurity in the world are not where they should be.
I'll give it a C minus.
Yeah, C minus.
I'm just
okay.
going to move this. So
Okay.
that when you talk to us both.
Okay.
Yeah,
let's do
that's
that.
great.
We'll move that. So let's start with the premise that cybersecurity is not really where it should be. We're scoring the world C minus at the moment. And
why do you say that? On our league tables, is it going up? Is it going down?
So the number
Rhetorical
of
question.
So like think about the plague of ransomware, the cost of cybercrime, but not even just cybercrime, but just data breaches, cock-ups. I mean, we're going to be talking about the banks. There's no suggestion that that's actually, countries or bad actors, state-sponsored actors. It's just cock-ups. You know, we make... Security is always like an afterthought, and you know this, Luce, from years of being a software consultant, that actually what the clients want is lots of features, fast, cheap, and then they get cross when it falls over, or if it falls over.
What do you think about that point, Kieran? You know, that you go to a client like a school in the past, or we have, or a local government even, and security is the hardest thing to sell to them. That they just don't want to pay for it.
They don't want to pay for it because they don't see the value of it until something terrible happens. I mean, it's just, it's infuriating. It's like when there was a big fight over seatbelts. Do you remember when they put seatbelts in cars and they had to make it law?
Yeah.
And people were like, this is ridiculous. You're hindering my movement. And like, but we're saving your life.
If you
like rural communities, when there was sort of like bans on drink driving because it kills people, rural communities, like, you're killing our social life. We want to go to the pub. What can we do?
Is it this thing about physical? Is it about physical? You know, I remember the roller coaster ride accident where they injured deliberately, life-changing injuries to people on a roller coaster ride, and I think it was Alton Towers.
Was it not deliberate?
Of course it wasn't deliberate.
I was going to say, I'm not sure it was deliberate.
No, but they immediately issued... right, they immediately said, we're going to make these people very rich, you know, and that you can have these sort of where people suffer as a consequence of physical things, air crashes, these sorts of things. But when it's on the internet, it's what is it about it that makes it sort of
We're still struggling with this split between the online world and the offline world. I mean, we're becoming more online, but we're still not quite figuring it out. The younger generation views it much more. Our generation is still splitting them up a lot, I think.
Yeah, and younger people are viewing it as life. And I think, so for some time, I think cybersecurity professionals have realised that actually all of the incentives don't work for security. Security is becoming this market failure. So to try to address this, the US cybersecurity agency, CISA, under the previous administration, launched a Secure by Design pledge. And by the end of last year, 250 odd companies had signed up to it saying, yeah, we are right behind this. And what we've done, how's it going? Well, great in terms of signatories, fantastic, and that itself is a real
but let's
progress.
think about there's signing something, isn't there? And there's the behind itness.
Okay.
The right behind it.
Well, I'll tell you. All right. Yeah, how it's going. Early days.
Right.
Early days.
How many months?
So, well, let's say it was done last year. We're not quite a year in, I think. So still early days. More than 200 organisations have signed up. So what we did was we went to all of their websites and looked for evidence of the Secure by Design pledges on their website and public materials. So eight have evidence of all of them. Big tick and a rosette for those 8 organisations. And roughly half have evidence of one.
Right.
One or more. And 75 have no evidence of any of it at all.
Wasn't one of the pledges that they will publish something on the website?
Yeah, that's right. But, I mean, I think that this also I feel bad even saying this because these are the good guys. These are the people who realise that security is bad. They're standing up to be counted. And then, of course, being human, we all swarm all over them and go, you're crap. But actually, all of the other organisations in the world haven't signed up to the pledge.
Right.
And I think there's this sort of whole kind of perversity, do you have lots of public vulnerabilities? There's databases, the CVE database, which lists all
CVE?
Common vulnerability
exploitation database.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that
and this is
that's actually a good thing. That's something you want to encourage organisations to do.
To publish their mistakes.
It's a sign of maturity. For sure.
Yeah.
But of course, if you hide by not doing it, nobody comes after you.
Let me pick up that point. Kieran, we talked to the banks and they said the last thing we want to do is publish our mistakes because if we suggest that a bank is unsafe, we have no customers overnight. We have to pretend that we're safe all the time. Whereas in fact, and this was told to me in confidence, so I'm going to tell everybody about it. In fact, we're paying out all the time for breaches of bank safety. I think everybody knows that this is happening all the time, that banks are the victims of scams just as much as the consumers.
I think we've just got your public apology of the week for next week,
please.
Apologise now.
Apologise now.
It is a public fact that I've heard both of you say is that the banks are getting scammed as much as consumers.
Oh, they are, yeah.
But you can't, how can you go around with a banner saying we've had 30,000 scams this week, now we've had 40,000
I think the truth, if it was logical, if people were logical, then they would admit to this stuff because everybody knows that everybody's under it. But it's about personality, it's about human decisions. The humans don't like to admit fault, particularly if they're getting paid a lot of money or if they're in charge and important. And so they justify the organisation not saying these things. But logically and on security level, they should be saying this is what's happened because it has happened. And then other people can learn from it.
Emily?
Well, one of the great things about this project, which has been so interesting, was we got to talk to just a handful of people. And the thing that really comes through when you ask them, well, what makes a mature organisation in terms of its security standards, all comes down to people and culture.
Yes.
Actually, somebody said giving the nerds a voice, making sure that you can't just be forced to break your processes to crash a product through to market, but also making people individually, standing up to say, I am responsible for the security of this product. and it's actually about people. And I think when we talk about the banks, people are going to come back into the story. We've been in this sort of cycle of like, yay, let's digitize everything. But people are really important, and people are the difference between a mature organisation and not.
Thank you. So we've talked about the people. We're talking also about the public, the publishing of that. We're also talking about the adherence to public pledges and stuff. We haven't talked about the technology. And a lot of the technology there, if we think of like memory safety, where basically you've got famous buffer overflows inherent in languages like C and C++, C++, which actually I learned 25 years ago is basically shit. It's like a house with no locks.
Yeah.
You know, the language itself allows you to rent bits of the memory, and you get these buffer overflows that expose the software and the systems you're writing to attack, to all sorts of insecurities. You've got modern languages like Rust, which actually where they're sort of, it's the ownership and borrowing model. It's all very interesting, geeky stuff that just prevents that at source. Really, a lot of this goes away if it's designed better, wouldn't you suggest?
Yeah, absolutely.
But how are you going to rip out all of this old kit and these old chips written in all this old rubbish?
It's funny you say the buffer over. I used to write security stories, and it was always an easy go-to. Just like, right, what terrible hole is it? And every time you buffer over, buffer over. How do you do it? Maturity. We sort of need to recognize that this is a persistent fault, and then there needs to be a combination of government, tech, policy people saying we need to tackle these things again and again and again, and we just don't get around to it. So I think we should start pushing on that. This is how we
because you have to be careful,
issues.
don't you? You don't rip out lift operation software that's just worked for 100 years.
Yeah, so two things on that.
It's also going to be highly secure, that software, I would imagine.
Yeah,
The simpler it is, typically, the more secure it is.
Yeah, so we were speaking to people who are using Rust and other sort of memory-safe languages, but the people working in kind of the smart device type of world where you've got very constrained devices, they're like, well, we have to be using C and C++. So it really depends on which sector people are in. But yeah, those memory safe languages. I think a really interesting newish development is the National Cybersecurity Centre here has published a list of unforgivable vulnerabilities.
Right.
And actually looking at the age of some of the common vulnerabilities in the database. Most of them are from last year, but one or two are like from 1999.
Wow.
And still current. So it's like,
Yes.
So yeah, as you say, I think there's one estimate that buffer overflow, memory safety issues account for 70% of exploits. So
And and it enables a hacker to employ a bit of your computer without you knowing it. It's virtually untraceable because it sits in its own memory bubble in your machine, and that very dangerous stuff. So anyway, fascinating work, and it's nice to have a geek. And while we're on the geek thing, our team in Oxford has been making a switch to the React UI library. So before we talk about that, it's time for our guilty pleasure online. Now, I've got Emily down here, so I hope, Emily, you've got a guilty pleasure online.
I do.
This is a focused ask here.
I do, because, I mean, as we were discussing before, I've been watching and listening to you all with your guilty pleasures and the 101, and I'm
Sorry,
like, I
listening to
don't
me.
have one, and I'm boring. So I made a big effort. What is my guilty pleasure? It is TikTok microwave meme.
Right.
Okay,
I'm
you know
sorry.
this one.
Yeah.
So
Do you?
Yeah.
so my TikTok feed is
Sorry,
it's
are
a
these,
bit pathetic.
are
Okay,
these
look,
micro?
I think
What
I
is
can
this?
hear it.
I can hear something. Is
What-
there something going to be played
that's
somewhere?
part of it.
Oh, here we are.
Okay, here
What's
we go.
this?
There's one.
Yeah.
That's me going around and us all going around in the microwave.
Wait,
There was
I'm
two,
sorry.
There was two of me there for a second.
There
Is that-
was two
sorry,
of you, and so that
can we
I
just
think
sorry for the sake of people who really would listen to this as a podcast, what have they just seen? Because that was hidden behind a camera, and I can't really see the
okay. So
screen
what
anymore.
you see is you start with an image of like, oh, there's a lovely dog or a lovely cat, or in that case, we just had us sitting around
Ourselves.
our internet seriously table, And then you have the microwave sound, and we all rotate, and it's a filter, right?
Yeah.
It's a filter, so it does it automatically. And the joy of the TikTok microwave meme is how shit it is and how creepy and scary it becomes really quickly. So there's one which has an adorable whippet or greyhound, and then it rotates, and like the whole back half isn't really there, it's just covered in fur, or some which look like your night terrors when they turn around. So it's like how hilariously crap the AI is, basically.
Kieran, I don't know if you were aware of the frog in the blender. It sort of reminds me of that, and my question to you is, where are we going with this? But with the frog in the blender used to be a kind of video or something that would basically start with a frog who's very annoying, challenging you to turn the blender on. And he's like, and it escalates, and the speed of the blender is going up and up and up, and it's got 10 steps, and you are switching it up a step each time until the final when he disappears in this red and green mush. So have
you played this a lot?
I just remember the frog in the blender, because the frog was quite annoying. You know, he's like, oh yeah, you think you're hard enough? You're threatening me in the blender. Well, you bloody try it. You know, and it was all like this.
Yeah. What have I done?
And by the end, he's begging, no, I know, I really apologise. I really apologise. So
I think
there's
this
this awful. Yeah. Is it actually
you're
about cooking people in the microwave?
No, it's just rotating.
I'm so relieved. I was so worried. I was so worried about
in the microwave meme, except
because that's TikTok, isn't it? Nobody's harmed.
TikTok's
everything's
lovely. Nice. It's lovely. It's just that the AI filter is hilariously awful. You're just you're watching something rotate, but the AI is guessing what's at the back, and it doesn't realise like the back of a horse is the back of a horse.
It worked
rather
really
than a
well
person.
at the beginning.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, that's really interesting.
So thank you very much.
And then it's more complicated it gets, the more mad it gets.
Yeah, so. Unless you're an old person, and that's a different story, TikTok remains a nice environment to be in. For now. There you go. So this week, our team in Oxford has been making a switch to the React UI library. That's not a framework. And we discuss why we've made that choice and what we are learning. So basically, that's something that I've been heading up with the team. It's super geeky.
Lucian, I have a question. You've made a differentiation between a library and a framework.
Yeah,
Could you just explain why you did that? We've got to ask Lucian questions, Kieran.
Do you think he knows the difference?
I think he has. I think he was leading us there.
I don't quite know the difference precisely because I haven't worked with this enough, but I do. A library is kit that you can use, and it's like almost like we have a friend who builds car components, and it doesn't matter whether it's a BMW or a Mercedes or whatever. If you're putting a brake into a car, use the component that works in millions of different brands. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's solid, it's more object-oriented, and it's designed to sort of interface with other libraries. And when we come to React, we are also interested in a whole set of other technology. Whereas if you've got a framework like Angular, for instance, and we do have one system that we build in Angular, you buy the whole show. You know, the whole thing is designed to serve a complete solution. So you'll use Angular, which is a fantastic Google product for sort of a big app where you want to sort of do everything in the way of that app. With React, it's much lighter, it's more dynamic, and you can pull other things in.
So who's behind React? Did somebody invent it?
React, yes, is actually an Apple product. It was a Facebook product. It was created by Facebook in 2011 to have difficulties that they were finding with updating the user interface of their website. And what I really like about this is, why are we doing this? I mean, in the early days, we invented our own bits of kit to help us with what's called serverless architecture. So we were finding that the process of building stuff on web servers was exposing us to huge vulnerabilities. And we were doing more work with mission critical sort of government type sites and things like that, where we really didn't want to get it wrong. And what we decided to do was build everything locally and ship it out to just basically file spaces, like the Amazon S3 file spaces.
And that's like a contrast with say, open source frameworks like
WordPress and stuff
where
like
it's
that.
open source, there's lots of plugins, tons and tons of features, tons and tons of things.
I think...
What's the advantage of the serverless over that?
Well, that is actually a servered architecture where actually you're employing something in the cloud to build, and it's building the site on demand. So the kit is all out there, and so are all the vulnerabilities, and it's you're actually using server resources as well. So your database could be attacked. You could be exposed to much more.
So what are you learning from it? Is it good? Is it easy? What is it?
I think there's two things that really matter to us at this moment in time. One is a separation between content and tech, and you don't really want to have to depend upon techies to deliver content in a content management system.
And this is the classic dynamic between the website is usually a kind of crucible of contention, isn't it, between the tech team and the marketing, the comms people. So we've got sort of both here, and they're both, because both have a really pivotal role in it, right? And both actually do need to own it, but they can't both own it at the same time. So Lucian, how does React help with
and
this?
I think WordPress did deal with a lot of that, whereas it made the content management very accessible, but in a very specific way. Blog articles, the classic old stuff, but actually content managers want to affect partner logos on a site, or the order of things in a menu, and they'll get much more into that. And in the serverless environment, that becomes very challenging. And we were using things like Hugo and our own KinneyKit kind of libraries to do that. And they just became very remote, very geeky, because also content editors need help, videos, young people need to have lots of material online to learn how to use this stuff rather than centralize.
Well, what the next thing will be content people like myself just going to ChatGPT and saying, write some code for me, write me some PHP to do this thing.
And believe you me, techies are going to chat and saying, write a story for me, write an article for me.
They're also saying, write my code. Apparently 50% of developers are now using ChatGPT routinely to write code.
I had a go literally yesterday at it. I wanted to pull it in. I support Fulham, and I wanted to put a little update of what's just Fulham, not the full table. All right. I want to see what's happening in Fulham, and I want it on my website. So I asked ChatGPT to write me some code.
Yeah.
And it was pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, wow, this could have taken me a long time.
I know.
However, Kieran, there's also some stat which I've forgotten. Like, what's it trained on? Existing code. What's existing code full of? Bugs.
Yeah.
Well, I don't buy that with this stuff where you've got TypeScript in React. These are all safe codes, and actually the suggestions that I'm getting, there's another whole topic that really I really want to touch on, and that is the free VS Code platform that's provided by Microsoft.
That sounds
you have made my day. There's nothing I love more than a free VS.
It is award season, and I've been watching a lot of red carpet type of thing, but my goodness, I didn't realise
I hear the innuendo. When I say it's saving you
VS.
When I say it's saving you many, many thousands of pounds, how do you feel
I'm listening.
now?
A little more excited.
And built into what we've got is a gang of young people. So it's not just me going on this journey of discovery. All the youngest people are super brainy in Oxford
School.
and a React school. And actually, they need tools very quickly so that you can kind of set them up with an environment and help them. And they can throw it away if they're not interested or whatever. Whereas the old tools we've had, you have to really buy into it, get very heavy licenses, and it just felt all more industrial.
So is that the feel of it? It's more the sort of modern generation.
Playful,
you try
plug
it,
in,
you chuck it, get another one.
Pull things in, use things that other people have developed because it's easier and faster. Merge it with your own unique ID, and it's fun.
The modern mindset.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't got time to go into it. The internet series is about touching on things. We could serialize the components of this as an episode each time. Next.js is a whole set of libraries that sits inside React. GitHub is a very necessary code deployment network.
I'm doing an intervention
is
now.
a way of actually publishing the site, and finally, on top of it is sanity. sanity that you can
Sanity.
use.
That's a good
I
choice.
promise you, we're not going insane with this. No, forgive
We're
the
all
autism.
very thrilled.
Yeah,
We're
okay.
very happy
I
for
promise
you,
you, this is the internet. Seriously, we will keep away from these topics as much as possible. But I thought we'd have a little bit of a little. No, not at all. Us tech shamed are used to this. No, but actually, fantastic fun we're having, and we'll keep in touch, eh?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. After that, our next subject is we're going to be talking a bit about the news this week. A couple of things have taken our interest, but before that, it's time for our Tech Room 101.
Oh, delay.
Oh.
A delay and an abandon. We had a trigger for the voice
It's all right,
of God has
voice
just
of God.
apologised, but
You
we've
just
had
chill.
Absolute catastrophe.
I can imagine. Real
Well,
thoughts
there
and
has
things
been a
like that.
complete rewire of this office, and I actually feel it's all really
It's really
smart.
good.
It's really lovely. We absolutely love it. But
Except
there's going to
big
be
button.
some little
button.
teething
button.
issues.
It was big button.
Barclays Bank has been fined 7.5 million for a 3-day
Are
IT.
we doing the Tech Room 101?
Oh, sorry. I'm
putting
so
Barclays
sorry.
Bank
I
in
thought
room
the Tech
No.
Room 101. I thought the whole Tech Room 101 had been cancelled because of
If we
technical
just keep playing the music, you
technical
have to do it.
outages.
Okay.
Who's it today? It is
Kieran.
Oh my
Kieran,
God,
what is
the
your
top of
Tech
my
Room
head.
101?
Did I do that? Did
you
I
said
do
about
that?
Actually, I
something
do.
about printers.
I've got another printer story. You know how I hate HP?
Yes.
And I nearly destroyed my printer because of it.
Yes, I do.
Turns out Brother is just. I was looking around thinking, who are the printer companies
Yeah.
we can trust? Brother now has
Oh,
put out a
okay.
firmware which basically messes up if you don't use its own toner. So they've put out firmware into
Are
their.
you serious?
What, so that it will actually.
Yeah, are you
Yeah,
serious?
so it actually produce
So it's
worse
actually
printing,
deliberately designed
deliberately
to break.
making your printing worse if you don't use their more expensive toner. I say, oh my, can
No.
we just
my
have
God.
a printer company producing a printer that prints? That's all
Oh,
I want.
Also,
what do you
like,
want to be, a
why put the-
trillionaire?
Why
I
put
mean-
the effort into making the printing worse when you could put all that effort into actually just making the printer work?
I think we've got to a point of printing where it's amazing. Printers are amazing, and now they don't quite know what to do
Kieran, we
with
were
themselves.
talking about this
So they're
earlier.
just adding
We-
features, and
yeah.
then they're destroying our lives, and all I want
We
is
were
just a
talking
printer.
about this
There.
earlier, and funnily enough, I mean, one thing we were saying, and it's a bit of my Tech Room 101 for this week, which is a couple of things. But one of them was really based upon Wi-Fi, you know, that we're finding Wi-Fi in everything. And it's the wireless bit that's shit. So in my Tech Room 101, Sonos has destroyed itself with its own...
Its software is
Its
used to be
software,
great,
but
it's
also
horrific,
Apple
man.
AirPlays. It's not up to it. You send things to speakers, and then and you're in the middle of stuff, and then speakers.
Oh
Why
no,
has
I'm
that
just
stopped?
having phantom
why
music
has that
just coming
stopped?
I
on.
literally
Yeah.
had that
Yeah.
last night. I had a good friend of mine, Jerry, and he had a listening party for his new album. I should plug his album. It's
Oh, nice.
terrific.
Oh,
And we were having a listen, and I thought, I'll use AirPlay, and I'll play over my speakers rather than over my little laptop.
This
things.
is Jerry.
What's
Jerry
his name
Driver.
and what's the album called?
Jerry Driver.
Jerry Diver and
Diver.
Lisa Knapp. And I forget the name of their
Oh,
album.
nice.
But it's
Okay.
terrific.
We'll
Irish.
put that in the comments later. That's fantastic.
Anyway, yeah, but there was a massive. So I was trying to play it over the speakers,
Yes,
so I'd have
yeah.
a nicer experience, and it was
Yeah.
AirPlay speakers.
Appalling.
It's like 4 seconds delay, and then it just chops in and out. So I abandoned it and played it over my laptop.
Do you know, it's all this local
over
area
crappy
network
Siri,
thing,
yeah.
because I'm finding the one wireless thing I find is very solid, consistent for 14 years is the Philips Hue network, because it's got its own kind of network, and it's amazing. It's very robust. So anyway, thanks for that, and apologies for the technical errors with the Tech Room 101. I was also going to talk about my Tech Room 101, which is health insurance and previous history clauses, but I can't think of anything to do with the internet in that, so I'm just going to park that for now. But
you
anyway,
have to go to a portal. There you
yeah,
go.
I have to go to a portal. But tech outages, we've got our own. We've just had an outage with our Tech Room 101. There was a technical problem there. Would it be reasonable for the government to fine us?
Oh, I don't think so.
Stunned face.
Not-
because
not
it
for
was
this
just-
one.
No, not for this one. No.
Well, maybe
'cause
our
it also-
listener was.
But lovely if we got a
It
little
sets
invoice
up
in the
all
post.
the wrong
Fiver for the Tech Room 101
Internet
technical.
seriously podcast failure. £6.50.
Well, anyway, so the UK government has fined Barclays Bank for a 3-day IT failure that affected its consumers. And they said that they put that into the public domain because they want to have a conversation with the consumers. They want to say, we're hearing you, we're on your side. I presume it's that they regard banking as like a critical service. It's a bit like failing in your promise to provide food to people or water to people.
Yeah, it was like we were talking about earlier. They won't admit it because they don't. The human beings don't want to admit failure. So the government is trying its own ways to force people to deal with it. So they're finding them, and then that's obviously we're talking about it because we love talking about people being fined. This is peanuts to that bank. The story is that they've had to pay a fine because they messed up.
And
Emily,
they're on the front page of the newspapers.
Yeah.
And I suppose we're talking about secure by design, robust by design, business continuity by design.
Yeah.
We're
and
talking about a
technical
3-day.
debt probably as well, because there's been a lot of consolidation in the banking industry and other financial services. And what typically happens is the merger or acquisition happens. There's an old essential service running on a machine that no one really, from a relic of a company. There's an awful lot of old stuff. But just for context, between January 2023 and February 2025, so sort of 2-year period, 803 hours of banking outages. That's 33 days, nearly a month, or over a month in that period. The other thing that the committee were highlighting is the outages can happen around payday. There was a Barclays outage coinciding with the deadline where people have to file their tax returns and pay their tax. Can you imagine the stress? So real hardship from people who are expecting their pay to come in and all of their direct debits to go out.
But those people aren't going to get any of this money, are they? The people who were suffered from the outages, they're not going to get 7.5 million pounds, are they? They're not going to get anything at all.
Well, it's like in the US. If you
maybe
live in
better IT.
If you live in the US for long enough, they always have these class action lawsuits, and it's always when some companies rip someone off, then a whole bunch of people have got annoyed and they've hired a lawyer. And the lawyer takes most of the money once they've reached agreement. And then they ask you to apply as a consumer. You get an email, say apply. And you just don't bother.
That's another whole story.
It's the sort of
but
Erin
you can get like $4 if you spend an hour filling in this form. You're like, I'm not going to.
Thank you. We don't have much time, and there is
Okay.
another news story I wanted to just pick up on, which is in the USA. You were talking about that. The USA government's own Social Security Administration is now preventing its staff with new protocols and guidelines from accessing a whole load of websites, CNN, Fox News, the New York Times, the Washington Post.
This is big balls again, isn't it?
Yeah, and also additional website restrictions beyond news sites. It includes access to online shopping, sports websites, and so on. There's something about preventing staff, if you're a public service, from basically spending the whole day, on taxpayers' money shopping. I can kind of understand that, but they say that one of the purposes of the restrictions was to aim to reduce risks and better protect sensitive information. It just doesn't add up. So I'm an employee at the Social Security Administration, and I look at a Washington Post website to see what's happening. And my looking at that website and reading it may expose the administration to security risks and leaking.
Well, it is a security risk if you imagine that the president doesn't like what you might be reading. That's a security risk.
And also it's a security risk because while you're looking around at the Washington Post, Big Balls is accessing your computer and therefore all of the main databases and downloading all of the sensitive information about employees, right?
Just to clarify for people who probably didn't hear last week, Big Balls, you're not talking about me. You're not talking about Trump.
No.
Who are we talking about?
The
How old is he? Is he
19-year-old senior security
some
professional
Muskite.
person.
Okay, and yes, of course, and I recall he was nicknamed in the press as Big Balls for some reason I just can't figure out at all.
Well, I'll tell you what, because he's a ridiculously overconfident, cocky 19-year-old
see.
who's been allowed
see.
in the government's central systems for some reason that historians will ponder.
Yes.
Anyway, we know quite a few government officials in our work in America, and they seem like really decent people. I just cannot see how those very intelligent, highly qualified people reading websites about, it may be websites covering events that matter to, are pertinent to them, will somehow pose a security risk and
I
reduce.
really feel there are so many like really committed public servants who I think are just like, what am I living through? This is just a nightmare.
Well, I hate to say it, but I mean, if you wanted to be an authoritarian, one of the first things you do is limit people's access to, information that says things that points out that they're making bad decisions.
I see, and we're seeing this sort of harnessing of social media channels, all standing behind President Trump during his inauguration, and so it's almost like controlling the information. As they move closer to Russia, they're moving closer to these sort of Russian-type tactics.
We've always been at war with Vale, you know that, right?
Thank you very much. A fascinating discussion and very geeky this week. So next week we need more farce. Next week we need more memes and things. Though I did like the microwave, even though I was very scared about where that was going. This week we've been talking about secure by design. Emily's been doing some research onto that. Our team at Oxford have been making a switch to the React UI library, which is fascinating for me. And finally, we've been talking about some things in the news. Barclays being fined 7.5 million for IT failures, and strange thought police type things happening in the USA administration. Thanks very much. Before we go, please like, share online, hit the follow button and the subscribe button. That's it for this week. Thank you very much.